Ladies and gentlemen, you know what's funny? We spend so much time chasing validation from people who aren't even watching. I want to unpack a phrase that I've heard floating around. Women want them who don't care. At first glance, it sounds cynical. It sounds like manipulation, but let's pause and really explore what that means, because I don't think this is about apathy. I think this is about something far deeper. It's about authenticity. It's about certainty. It's about people who know who they are and don't bend just to be liked. The phrase "women want them who don't care" is often misunderstood. On the surface, it sounds like it's promoting emotional detachment or indifference, as if being cold or uninterested is somehow attractive. But if we go deeper, if we really take the time to unpack what's beneath those words, we find something far more meaningful: authenticity. People aren't drawn to those who don't care. They're drawn to those who don't pretend. When someone is comfortable in their own skin, when they show up as themselves without performing, without seeking approval, that energy is magnetic. It's not that they're trying to be liked, it's that they're being real. And that realness is rare. It's refreshing. In a world where so many people wear masks, trying to be what they think others want, the person who chooses to just be stands out. When we chase validation, whether it's through appearance, attention, or approval, we unintentionally give our power away. We're telling the world, "Tell me I'm enough." But when someone doesn't feel the need to seek that validation, when they already believe they're enough, that's a different kind of presence. It's quiet, calm, and self-assured. And ironically, that's what draws people in. So when we hear the idea that women want men who don't care, what they're really responding to is the sense of independence, of self, certainty. It's not about not caring about people, it's about not caring about pleasing everyone. It's about being emotionally grounded. It's about not shifting your personality based on who you're with, or shrinking yourself to avoid rejection. This idea applies beyond dating. In any human connection, romantic or otherwise, we are most drawn to those who have done the inner work. People who know who they are. People who can say yes and no with equal clarity. People who aren't afraid to disagree, to have opinions, or to be vulnerable. Authenticity also communicates something powerful: safety. When someone is consistent with their words and actions, when they show up the same whether they're being praised or criticized, that builds trust. And trust is the foundation of every meaningful connection. So, to care less isn't the goal. To stop pretending, to stop performing. That's the goal. That's the shift. It's not about detachment. It's about detaching from the need to be approved of. It's about moving from "how can I impress them" to "who am I, really?" And being okay with whatever answer comes up. When someone lives in that truth, they don't need to chase. They don't need to prove. They simply attract because nothing is more attractive than a person who's already at peace with themselves. Certainty is one of the most attractive traits a person can possess. In a world full of noise, distraction, and uncertainty, people naturally gravitate toward those who appear calm, grounded, and sure of themselves. It's not about arrogance or stubbornness. It's about clarity. The kind of clarity that comes from knowing who you are, what you stand for, and not needing to prove it to anyone. When we talk about certainty being attractive, we're not talking about someone who has all the answers. It's not about perfection. It's about presence. It's about being comfortable in your own skin, regardless of the situation or the company you're in. It's the quiet strength of someone who doesn't fumble for approval or panic in silence. That calm energy stands out, not because it demands attention, but because it doesn't. Imagine walking into a room full of people. Most are caught in their heads, wondering how they're being perceived, adjusting themselves constantly based on who's around. Then there's one person who just is. They're not trying to impress. They're simply showing up as themselves. They speak when they have something to say, they listen fully, and they don't need the spotlight to feel seen. That's the power of certainty. This is why people, including women, are drawn to those who don't seem desperate for attention. Desperation is loud. Certainty is quiet, and in that quiet confidence, there's peace. There's trust because when someone is certain in themselves, others feel emotionally safe around them. They feel less pressure to perform, to measure up. It creates space for authenticity to flow both ways. Certainty is also linked to decisiveness. It's knowing what you value and not compromising that for temporary approval. It shows in your choices, in your pace, in the way you say yes and no. People pay attention to those boundaries. They respect them, and often they find comfort in them, because boundaries show that you value your time, your energy, and your peace. It's important to note that certainty isn't static. It grows through experience, through mistakes, through reflection. It's not something you're born with, it's something you build. And ironically, part of that building process involves embracing uncertainty in the world around you while staying grounded in who you are. You learn to trust yourself even when outcomes are unclear. That's what makes you solid in an unstable world. So when someone says that people are drawn to those who don't care, what they often mean is this: we're drawn to those who don't waver based on what others think. We're drawn to people who don't crumble under pressure to be liked. That stillness, that inner calm's contagious. It creates a kind of gravity, and in that gravity, real connection can begin. Confidence isn't about being the loudest voice in the room or having all the answers. True confidence, deep, lasting confidence, is quiet. It doesn't shout. It doesn't need to convince anyone. It simply exists as a calm, unshakable belief. I am enough. That one sentence holds more power than any external validation or public approval ever could. When we think of confidence, we often picture someone charismatic, charming, maybe even a bit flashy. But real confidence isn't performative. It's not wrapped in arrogance or bravado. It's the kind of energy that doesn't seek attention, but commands respect. It's found in how someone carries themselves, not in how many words they say. It's seen in stillness, in grounded decisions, in eye contact that doesn't flinch, and in the willingness to be vulnerable without fear of being judged. A person who believes they are enough doesn't feel the need to chase people, titles, or status. They don't measure their worth based on how others respond to them. Instead, they show up from a place of wholeness. That wholeness allows them to love without clinging, to lead without dominating, and to express themselves without over-explaining. They're not afraid to say, "I don't know," or "that's not for me," because their identity isn't tied to being right or being accepted. This kind of confidence creates space. It invites others to be real, to drop their masks. There's something freeing about being around someone who isn't trying to impress. It makes people feel safe, because there's no hidden agenda, no pressure to perform or meet unspoken expectations. And ironically, that safety becomes magnetic. We are drawn to people who are at peace with themselves because we crave that peace too. Think about how often people live in comparison. Scrolling through social media, measuring their progress against curated highlights, constantly wondering if they're doing enough, becoming enough, earning enough. That kind of life is loud. It's filled with inner noise. But the confident person has learned to tune out that static. They don't ignore growth, but they no longer chase it from a place of lack. They grow from a place of love, not fear. Confidence also shows in how someone handles rejection or failure. When someone truly believes they are enough, a no doesn't break them. A failed relationship doesn't define them. A missed opportunity doesn't shrink their identity. They know that who they are isn't tied to outcomes. They are grounded in something more permanent, their values, their self-respect, their integrity. So if you want to cultivate real confidence, don't focus on how you're perceived. Focus on how aligned you are with who you truly are. Build that inner belief, repeat it until it becomes your foundation. I am enough, not because someone told you, not because you proved it, but because you decided it, and then lived it. Let me know if you'd like this version styled for Instagram captions, video narration, or a short monologue. Being nice isn't enough. In fact, sometimes being too nice, without any boundaries, can push people away rather than draw them in. It's a counterintuitive truth, but one that plays out in relationships every day. People don't build deep trust or connection with someone simply because they're agreeable or always available. Trust is built through clarity, honesty, and above all, boundaries. Nice without boundaries can quickly become people-pleasing. And people-pleasing isn't love, it's fear. It's the fear of rejection, the fear of not being liked, the fear of being alone. So instead of showing up authentically, Many people show up as what they think others want. They say yes when they mean no. They avoid conflict to keep the peace. They suppress their truth to maintain approval, and in doing so, they lose something far more important than someone else's affection. They lose themselves. Boundaries are not walls. They're not about pushing people away. They're about defining where you end and where someone else begins. They're about protecting your time, energy, values, and emotional well-being. And ironically, when you have clear boundaries, people respect you more, not less, because boundaries are a sign of self-respect, and self-respect inspires respect from others. Imagine being in a relationship, romantic, platonic, or professional, with someone who never speaks up, always agrees, and never challenges anything. At first, it might seem easy or even comfortable, but over time, it becomes hard to trust that person. Why? Because their true thoughts and feelings are hidden. You don't know where they stand. You don't know what matters to them. You don't know what's real and what's just polite performance. And without that clarity, real intimacy can't grow. Compare that to someone who's kind but honest, someone who communicates when they're uncomfortable, who says no with grace, who gives without losing themselves. That person is trustworthy. You know where they stand. You know when they say yes, they mean it, and when they say no, they're being truthful. That's the kind of person people feel safe with. That's the kind of connection that lasts. It's important to understand that boundaries are not selfish. They are acts of love, not just for yourself, but for others. When you set boundaries, you teach people how to love you well. You show them what's okay and what's not. You lead with clarity, and that clarity builds trust. So if you've been taught that being nice means always saying yes, always being available, or never rocking the boat, it's time to rewrite that story. Kindness is powerful, but kindness with boundaries is transformative. It means you can be generous without being drained. You can be open without being overwhelmed. You can care deeply without losing yourself in the process. In the end, people don't just want someone who is nice. They want someone who is real, and realness requires boundaries, because trust doesn't grow from perfection. It grows from truth. There's a profound difference between needing someone and choosing someone. At first, the two might look similar. After all, both involve desire, connection, and attention. But the energy behind them is completely different. One comes from fear, the other from freedom. One is rooted in lack, the other in wholeness. And when it comes to building healthy relationships, that difference makes all the difference. Needing someone often stems from a belief that something is missing inside of us, that we're incomplete on our own. That without this person, we won't feel loved, seen, validated, or secure, and so we cling, we become anxious, we overgive, overthink, and overextend ourselves to keep the connection alive, because losing it feels like losing a part of our identity. It's not really love at that point, it's dependency, and dependency is heavy. It places pressure on the relationship to fix what we haven't yet faced within ourselves. Choosing someone, on the other hand, is completely different. Choosing means, I know who I am, I'm good on my own, but I still want to share this life with you. It comes from a place of abundance. There's no desperation, no grasping, no you complete me narrative. Instead, it's you complement me. That kind of love breathes, it allows space. It doesn't smother or suffocate, it supports. When someone chooses you not because they need you, but because they see you, appreciate you, and value the connection you feel it, there's no game, playing, no manipulation, no fear-based tactics, just presence, just truth. That's what builds emotional safety, and in emotional safety, love can grow. Not the frantic, fireworks kind of love that fizzles fast, but the steady, grounded kind that strengthens over time. Here's the truth, we all want to be chosen. But more than that, we want to be chosen freely. Not because someone is afraid of being alone, not because we're filling a void, but because we're genuinely seen and loved for who we are. That kind of choice is rare, but it starts with us. It starts with choosing ourselves first. When we do the work to know ourselves, When we face our insecurities, learn our patterns, and heal the wounds that make us chase unhealthy attachment, we become whole. And from that wholeness, we begin to attract different kinds of relationships, not based on fear, not based on lack, but based on alignment, based on mutual respect, shared values, and emotional maturity. So if you're in a place where you feel like you need someone to feel okay, pause, reflect, ask yourself what's really underneath that need, because the love you're seeking from others often mirrors the love you've yet to give yourself. And when you finally do, when you realize you are already enough, you'll stop needing to be chosen, you'll start choosing, and that's when everything changes. It's not that people don't care, it's that they care about the right things. There's a big difference between being emotionally unavailable and being emotionally grounded. When someone says, "I don't care," what they often mean, at least in the context of real confidence and attraction, is I care more about my peace, my purpose, and my values than I do about impressing people. And that shift changes everything. The person who doesn't overcare isn't cold, they're just selective. They don't chase approval because they've already built self-acceptance. They don't beg for attention because they've cultivated self-respect. They care deeply, but they've learned to care inward first and outward from a place of stability. That's why their energy feels different, calmer, centered, more powerful. In relationships, this kind of presence is magnetic. When someone cares deeply about who they are, what they believe in, and how they spend their time, they create a natural filter. They don't entertain chaos. They don't compromise their integrity just to avoid being alone. They don't pretend to be someone else for the sake of being liked. That kind of clarity, of knowing what to care about and what to let go of, is rare, and rare is attractive. On the flip side, when someone cares too much about everything, what others think, how they're being perceived, how to avoid conflict, they often lose themselves in the process. They become reactive instead of intentional. Their emotions are easily swayed by outside opinions. They start living for acceptance instead of authenticity, and that's exhausting, not just for them, but for the people around them too. Caring about the right things also means understanding your own worth. It means knowing you don't have to prove yourself to be valuable. You don't need to earn love by overextending or over-explaining. When you're rooted in who you are, you naturally become more attractive, not because you're trying to be, but because wholeness is hard to ignore. This doesn't mean we stop being empathetic or stop showing kindness. It means we learn where to place our energy. We stop pouring into people who don't value us. We stop obsessing over outcomes we can't control. We stop letting our worth be determined by who texts back or who doesn't. And in doing so, we create space for people who meet us with the same depth, clarity, and care that we've already given ourselves. When you truly care about the right things, your peace, your purpose, your personal growth, you stop chasing, you start attracting, you stop performing, you start aligning, you begin to notice who's for you and who's just filling space. And more importantly, you start showing up fully, not because someone else asked you to, but because you chose to. So it's never about not caring. It's about caring intentionally, caring with boundaries, caring with balance, and most of all, caring in a way that doesn't require you to lose yourself to be loved.